This is a tweet from Matt Rickard, who is a former engineer, I believe, at Google. Let's take a look at his profile here. He was formerly at Google, working on Kubernetes, and now I'm assuming is probably at Blackstone. He wrote this tweet, which I thought was interesting. He summarized it in an article called An Ideal CI/CD System, where he talked about what would be the ideal CI/CD setup or system that if he had to envision the stack, it would be serverless. So it'd be ephemeral and serverless. That makes sense, right? You don't really want things hanging around. There's no reason to be managing Jenkins or
Yeah,
individual
you don't want to
nodes.
manage them.
So, yep. On-prem or cloud prem. For small projects, fine to use hosted CI/CD services, but anything bigger than a toy project probably should be spinning up runners inside your cloud account. That makes sense. Minimal permissions or native IAM. Those are basically your user context. So workers should authenticate in a cloud native way, OIDC, and be deployed with a minimal set of permissions. That makes sense to me. You want to minimize the amount of exposure. Easy to debug. Oh, hallelujah. Like, being able to debug these things. As you and I rightly just pointed out, when
Yeah.
YAML goes wrong, it goes really wrong. Triggers, but not complicated ones. So he talks about calls up GitHub Actions, provides a good model for running workflows automatically, but don't build a complicated business process around for manual triggers. And I would agree with this. I really like GitHub Actions event model. I don't know about you, but I think their event model is pretty solid. What do you think?
I have spent a bunch of time trying to get them to work in Act and not
Oh, okay.
having
Well,
much
there you go.
success. So I can understand where Matt's coming from here.
Code, not YAML. We literally just talked about this with Dagger.
Yeah.
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 And then DAG.
Directed acyclic graph, probably. It's about how you manage dependencies.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. So
Yeah.
so a few of us commented in here. I was one of them. So we had comments from a variety of people. A lot of people mentioned Dagger, which I
Yeah.
thought was funny. So Keith Pitt, who is the founder and CEO of Buildkite, a very popular CI tool, said, "Hey, we support this in Buildkite," and of course, I had to dogpile on that and say, "Oh, one add, you could add Octopus Deploy to the mix, and you could also consider Dagger if you want portable pipelines." So you can see in here people are mentioning BuildJet. Have you heard of BuildJet?
No.
These guys were part of Y Combinator recently, and
Yeah.
what they do is they give you faster runs of your GitHub Actions. So they
Mm.
provide super powerful runners for GitHub Actions, and they talk about make your builds like 2 times faster and cheaper. So just by one line of code changing here from a built-in runner, which is the one provided by GitHub, if you replace it with the one from BuildJet, it goes off to BuildJet, but then it runs it really, really fast there. And it gives some comparisons of how fast their runs could be. And these are the
Wow.
prices they offer. And look at this monster 32 virtual CPU, 64 gigs of RAM, and 4 cents a minute, approximately.
Yeah.
So awesome. So that's BuildJet. So BuildJet is one that was mentioned in that ideal stack. So you can just view through here, like what people are thinking. I think a lot of people are hoping for something like Docker. Sorry, like Dagger. Excuse me, I'm getting my terms
Dagger.
mixed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so people are mentioning Dagger in here as a code only or code first approach, maybe for
Yeah.
defining pipelines. People are mentioning GitLab. I had to, of course, mention Octopus. So there you go. So I thought this was I think this was I think this is an interesting discussion. Like, what makes an ideal system for you in your mind, Jim? Like, is it this list? Does this fall? Is there anything missing in this list from your perspective? The only thing that I would see is like manageability or observability, like being able to get alerted. I think some of the stuff you have to roll yourself. Like if a build breaks or a deployment fails, obviously with Octopus we have integrations and stuff, but if those things happen, those out of the box solutions tend not to exist. I don't know about you, but I would like to
Yeah.
be notified on Slack, like, hey, something broke, or hey, blah blah blah. Like you have to wire that all up yourself. It's really frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are a few different things you really want out of a CI/CD system at different stages of evolution of something. Like when you're doing something new and modern and you've got control over everything, that fast feedback that something like Dagger would give you when setting up your pipeline is the most important thing, right? Because you want to evolve it and modify it. Then as the solution probably evolves, it gets bigger, and now you've got more tests, and the tests are more complicated, and they start failing. So you need, you know, insights and observability, like you said, over what's going wrong as the solution gets more complicated. Um, or you go a different route and maybe things get smaller and start having to interact with each other, which is again
Right.
probably more of the triggers and all of that sort of integration that he's talking about here. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think a lot of people jumped on this one. And it's
code not
unfortunate
YAML,
this
100%.
isn't I'm kind of upset he didn't make this number 1. I don't think anyone likes YAML, and I think the people who say they do are lying. I don't think
Yeah,
anyone likes YAML, and
yeah,
I think if it was easy, if the object model was easy enough to use, or the API was easy enough to use, people would gravitate towards code in no time flat. And I think
mm,
YAML is fine to a certain extent, but for complicated pipelines, and you and I have built our fair share, this YAML falls apart really fast. And
yeah,
like I've seen YAML documents that make your eyes bleed, and they're so big and they're so convoluted. And you're like, I don't know where I am, and you need to break out the ruler and all those jokes. That there's a reason why those jokes exist, is because it's really
yeah.
hard.
YAML really falls into that demoware trap, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Right? Like, look how simple this Hello World application is in
yeah.
YAML.
YAML is very much like the opposite. Code is very much like do as I say, not what I mean, and YAML is the opposite. YAML is do what I mean, not what I say. And
Mm.
yeah, because YAML is a very high level sort of representation, and I don't think it maps well for pipelines. I think despite the fact that everyone supports it, I don't know if what the future of YAML is holds long term
Well, it doesn't
around
look like it. I
CI/CD.
mean, the trend's definitely towards code, right? All of the newer
Yeah,
generation of tools are supporting code first.
yeah. I'm
Yeah,
with you. I'm with you. All right, so an ideal CI/CD system. Go check it out if you're at all curious. So that's up on Twitter there, and that's from Matt
yeah,
Rickard. Thanks, Matt. That's a great comment, and definitely felt like good thread. That was one I wanted to jump in on.
yeah, I like it.